Okay, once we have a CameraMatch reference object in place, we can go ahead and create a sheet layer viewport and insert a CameraMatch object. So I'm going to go ahead and create a viewport, and you can give it a name or whatever you need, and we want to make sure it goes to a sheet layer. I'm going to create a new sheet layer. Okay, and we don't really want the planar or screen object showing in this case. I'm going to turn those off. The layers, we want to show this existing for alignment purposes. So we need that on at first, and later on we can add the new stuff and turn off the existing. So that's okay. And as far as classes goes, if you have any classes that you don't need, especially ones that have very complex objects, such as furniture, plumbing, doors and windows. Anything you can turn off that's not necessary for alignment, do that, and it'll help make tuning the view faster. Okay, this file really doesn't have much of that, so I'll click OK, and now we have a sheet layer with a new viewport on it. Okay, so we want to go to the annotations of that viewport. And this is where the CameraMatch object is placed. So I'm going to go up to my menu and place CameraMatch object. All right. Now in this dialog, it wants us first to choose a photo image. There's nothing available in the document right now. It's going to list any image resources that are available. There are none, so let's go ahead and import one. Okay, so I'm going to go in and find on my hard drive our photo image and click open. And I'll go ahead and keep it a JPEG. And here we have photo brightness. The default's 30%. And what that does is it just lightens the photo a little bit. And usually that helps us see the control lines better. It can aid with other things as well. The rendering is not affected by this. It's only for setting up CameraMatch. Okay, the next section of this dialog, we've got a pop-up to choose our reference object. We only have one in our file, so that's chosen. But if you had more, you could select the one that you wanted. And then this just allows you to choose a style for extension lines of control lines. And these are just dashed extensions of the controls that go across the photo. Okay, let's click OK, and we now have that object inserted. And let's go and set this up at a size that we'd like. I'd like to fill a letter size sheet up, so I'm going to go ahead and make it maybe 8 inches tall. Okay, and now the sheet layer was set up with a different size, so let's go and change that. Okay, that's a little more realistic. And go back into the viewport annotations and select the CameraMatch object. And let's go and take a look at the options here in the object info palette. At the top here, we have a settings button. And this button brings up those same settings that we had available when we created the object. So we don't need that at this point. And then it shows us here how many pixels wide and tall the image is, and we had set up the printed size here, and when you change one, the other changes to keep those proportions. So if we wanted this to be, say, 11 inches wide, the height will adjust to accommodate that. I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 8 tall. Okay, some other options here. Show photo. We can uncheck that and the photo will disappear. Clip photo to viewport crop. that allows us to clip the photo if we use a viewport crop. At this point, we are not cropping anything, but we can do that. What else we have? We've got show control lines, so we can turn those on and off as we'd like. And some of these checkboxes will turn on and off depending on other things that are done with the set view and fine-tune view, depending on the render settings. It does that to get things to show up properly. Okay, show reference object 3D axis, and really all that's going to do is to show that 3D part of the reference object that we placed in the model. It allows us to turn that on and off. In this case, we put that on the existing model layer, and we're going to turn that layer off, so this is not going to affect us in the final rendering. What else we have? Show preview object. This odd green and red object with the grid on it, that's a preview object, and that allows us to visualize something in the CameraMatch object as we move controls around to see how that view is shaping up. Okay, so this preview object can be set to a specific size of an element in the model, and that way it'll help us visualize how that part of the model will display as we set up the view. So let's go ahead and set that up. In the model, I had gone and measured the length and width of the building, and then I measured the height of the top of the space here all the way to the top of the Capitol. So I have those dimensions, so I'm going to go ahead and put those in. So I'm going to turn this off, and that'll allow me to put 3 separate dimensions. And those dimensions I had as 222.7, 96 feet, and 32 feet 5 inches. And now this grid actually stops displaying because it's so dense and it doesn't want to take too long. So what we're going to do is increase the size of the spacing. Let's try 5 feet. Okay. And this offset, we don't need to offset, but that's if this element was at the corner of this element was at a different location than the reference object we placed. In this case, I have it right at this corner, so I'm going to leave it at 0, 0 and click OK. Okay, so there's the object. It looks quite large because the control lines are not in place. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this target control, and I'm going to put it right at this top corner. Now I notice my snaps are on, and it's much easier to turn off all snaps when adjusting all these controls because you don't really want to snap to anything in the model. So I've just pinpointed this target at the same location in the photo that we placed that reference object in the model. Okay, so the rest is just aligning control lines to these horizontals in the model. So the green ones I'm placing along these lines here, and that'll help to define the left vanishing point. Okay, so here, now when you're doing this, you'll notice that preview object kind of gets bizarre until you start shaping up the view, and in some cases you just want to turn it off. So I'm going to uncheck show preview object for now, and I'll wait until I get these a little closer. And one thing I often do is just get these in a rough location of where I want them. And then I'll zoom in and adjust them. So let's do that. Okay, these are defining the blue lines define the vertical vanishing point. So I need to put those on verticals, and I'm using the ridges of the columns that are not on the edge because it's a tapered column, so I'm trying to pick ridges that are pretty much pointing towards the camera view to be more accurate. Okay, so that looks a lot more correct. So let's turn on that preview object. Now we notice it's really large, and that's because we have not given any scale to the photograph yet, and that is done through a measured line. You'll notice here one of the control lines actually is given a dimension, and we can choose which one that is, and I'd like to give it to my R1. So I'm going to change that over here in the info palette, and now we've given that the dimension. But the dimension of this part of the building is 96 feet. So let's type that in here. And in addition to that, we want to make sure that this control line is drawn to that element at the full 96 feet that we've given it. So we want to make sure it goes from corner to corner, and that will give it a much more accurate scale. Now let's see, this should go down a little bit more, and this is where you just want to fine-tune everything now at this stage. So and you'll see the preview object is shaping up pretty well. Not perfect, but it's pretty good. So it's just a matter of now going in and trying to get these lines more accurate. That green line looks pretty good there. That line looks pretty good. Needs to come down a little here. Okay. And the red line is a little high. Okay, let's check these verticals out. The more accurate these are placed, the closer that view will get. So you want to really try to be as accurate as possible. You might notice too that these labels may be a bit large, or sometimes they're a bit small, and that could be easily changed simply by selecting the CameraMatch object and setting the text size. So here I'm going to change it to say 6, and you see those all changed size, so it's a lot more out of your way. Okay, I think we got things close enough. We have the left side of it hanging out a little bit, but that's easy enough to deal with through the tuning controls. So I think it's time to move on to setting and tuning the view.